Welcome to La Verdad Duele. What is that? The truth. The truth that hurts. Even though we're not intending to hurt anybody's feelings, we know that we may share information that many people have strong opinions on. This is solely based on the fact that we love sharing information and we love passing down knowledge. And this podcast is all about that. And we hope you can enjoy that. Let's get to it. Welcome, Puyaka. I'm your host, Tijani Musa, and today we have a heavy topic to discuss. Let's get to it. Emmett Till, Money, Mississippi. He was 14. Martin Luther King Jr., Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. He was 39. Michael Brown Jr., Ferguson, Missouri. He was 18. Tamir Rice, Cleveland, Ohio. He was 12. Trayvon Benjamin Martin, Sanford, Florida. He was 17. Freddie Carlos Gray, Baltimore, Maryland. He was 25. Eric Gardner, Staten Island, New York. He was 27. Philando Castile, Falcon Heights, Minnesota. He was 32. Alton Starlin, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. He was 37. Sandra Bland, Waller County, Texas. She was 28. George Floyd, Minneapolis, Minnesota. He was 46. And Breonna Taylor, Louisville, Kentucky. She was 26. Happy birthday, Queen, and many others. May the brothers and sisters' souls rest in power. I was talking to one of my mentees the other day, and she reminded me that in 2020, Tamir Rice was supposed to graduate from high school in her class. And I was so sad to hear that. I couldn't bear but just gave her a hug over the phone, because that is one of the saddest things that I had to listen to for a young person to tell me. Ladies and gentlemen, to help me make sense of what is happening today in our culture, in our society, and in our country, I've invited one of the brightest young persons that I know, Christian Reid. Chris was born and raised in Harlem. He graduated from George Mason University in Fairfax, where we met. After graduation, Chris stayed in the Fairfax area for a while before moving back to New York, where he started working in corporate jobs. Chris was a leader on campus, and those qualities are serving him well in his workforce. Christian, welcome to La Verdad Duele.
Thank you. Puika.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, I like the energy. All right, man, we know that we have a lot to discuss here today. And it is definitely a heavy topic to discuss. And I really don't want to hear anybody talking about the results of any investigations, a coroner or examiner's office. Pretty much, I don't want to hear any excuses. And so before we get into this, Chris, I really want to know, how are you doing? Like, how are you feeling emotionally, mentally, and physically?
Thank you. I'm definitely just tired in this moment. I think I felt, and I think we've all felt, a range of emotions: anger, sadness, frustration, tired. Just, when is this going to change? When am I going to just be able to walk outside and, walk to the store and come back and it just be okay. Right. So, I think every moment, it changes. It definitely changes, per hour. So I think right now I'm feeling a little bit better than, I did yesterday. I know I was able to get out and get to a couple of protests in DC, and just that moment alone that I was, in the protest, I think was a lot for me, just because I was like, I've never had this feeling, right? I think this was the first feeling of freedom I've really felt.
Wow.
So that was really, really big for me. And I think I want that feeling again. So, I know I have plans to kind of get to a couple of more, and hopefully we can have that moment and that feeling for the rest of our lives, right, through all this. So, at the moment, I'm feeling hopeful, tired, but hopeful. So that is good.
That's awesome. And I was talking to one of my mentees the other day, and she actually mentioned to me, she said, did you know that Tamir Rice could be graduating this year in 2020 from high school? I was like, wow, I didn't even think about that. because he was like 12 years old when he got killed, and he could be graduating right now. And just brief, you mentioned that you've been protesting. How are you seeing this protest happening, and what are the motivations from people, and how do they keep this going? First of all, I want to thank you for being out there on the street and putting your life in danger in the middle of the pandemic. But how do you see the protests happening over there?
Really, I mean, just the second we've gone out there, I've seen different. I went on I rode my bike, and kind of rode to a couple of different protests. We didn't stay with just one. We wanted to check out the one that was organized near the White House. So we checked that one out, and I think they just kind of walked all the way through Pennsylvania Avenue. Then we saw another one that was just starting to be formed, and it was just kind of, hey, a bunch of people had some signs by I don't remember which monument. I think the Lincoln Memorial. And they said, hey, we're gonna go march on over here. You guys want to come on? And then kind of just formed that way. But I think the motivation there is, I think people realize that things have to change, right? And things have to change now. I think that's, I was talking to somebody the other day about this being, a movement and not a moment. I think, unfortunately, with a lot of the names that you read, at the top of this podcast, it was a moment, right? It was frustration, rage. But, they after a while, it just lost its fire, right? And that is the unfortunate reality of the systematic oppression that we've dealt with for these centuries, right? And I think now is the time. I think it's the perfect combination of enough is enough, and people realizing, hey, we actually do have power, and if we unify and we get together, we can actually make something happen. So I think that's kind of been the driving force for everyone. And I think people have the motivation on their hands now. Now people are like, hey, I need to get out of my house, right? People have been in their houses and self-quarantining for months. And people are realizing that, hey, this is bigger than that, right? And I think that's kind of one of the driving factors behind it as well.
That is, yep. I like what you just said. This is a movement. It's not a moment. Even though it took a moment to take those lives away, because the names that I listed, these are just names that we heard about, names that we know. There are so many other people. I have in front of me a list of so many others that I didn't even mention, but these are just names that we hear in the media. But there are so many other people that have suffered through what is going on in this country. And so, Chris, I was thinking, when we read or stand for the pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, it says, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It says liberty and justice for all. And then it also says indivisible with liberty and justice for all. When I hear the word indivisible, it means that we cannot be divided. But then we have politicians, or we have individuals occupying the White House that are trying to divide us, trying to use military against its own citizens, trying to use words to divide American population, trying to use words against us. I don't get that, because when I read this allegiance, it's saying that it's supposed to protect all of us. It's not saying it's going to protect only white people. It did not say a few. It did not say it's protecting racists. It says for everybody. We are, as black people, are included in this liberty and justice. And so I don't understand why somebody in the White House or people in the White House are using divisive languages to try to separate people.
Right. No, I mean, I agree. I think, when the Constitution was written, right, when we talk about all these laws and everything that is, that makes this country, how amazing it is, everybody seems to forget about the black people, right, and forget about minorities and we're here, we're here, but they only seem to care about not just racist, but the majority of this country, right? And they don't care at all, about the rest of this country that, that makes up the American population. And it's funny when you said that. I was just thinking, about that. And most of America, I don't think, is white. I think a couple of years ago it actually passed that more minorities make up the country than white people. But it seems that the rules of the social rules of just being in this country only apply to now the minority of the country, right?
Right.
So it's very interesting that
Maybe what we need to start doing is one of the solutions probably is eliminating minorities, majority. Maybe those are conflicting views. People use that literally and use it to pretty much demean other people.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think at the moment, I think we're, there's a paradigm shift of thought that needs to happen, right? Exactly what you just said. I don't think it necessarily needs to be, hey, minorities, the majorities. It just needs to be humans, humans first,
Right.
We are all American, regardless of, if I'm black, you're white or Spanish or whatever. At the end of the day, we are all American. We're all citizens of this country. We all have the same. We should have anyway.
Right.
So I think we need to see that first before we see, this person is that, then that bad person or that, because it's at the end of the day, it's not about that, right? Like it's not, So I think when we get back to that and we realize that we need to love first, and we need to lead with love. I think that would be how we combat this, right? And how we bring that change, right? You were just talking about kind of just the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And I was just thinking right after that, the next saying is, united we stand, but divided we fall, right?
Right.
And I think that's everywhere, right? America, united we stand, but it's never, the divided we fall part is never talked about. That is the pivotal part of the entire thing, right? I think about, how everything's being handled state by state with everything going on with the pandemic. And I think about, what the guy in the White House is doing and really just trying to divide us, right? And I think what makes America the country that it is standing, in solidarity. So I'm really happy with what I'm seeing from companies, from people. I think this is the beginning. I think people definitely need to do more, but I think that people are realizing, right, that we need to stand in solidarity. We need to actually be united, right, and really get that principle down before we get anything else. So,
and just to be clear, the problems we're talking about here are white police officers killing black men and women. Officers thinking that they are to some extent above the law and that they are superior to black bodies. And then also we have a problem of gentrification in this country where businesses will come into, especially the DC area, they will come into this area and just buy buildings or try to put up expensive units or expensive apartments, businesses and then in order for them to be able to do that, they are pretty much driving locals away from their city, the place that they call home. And because the cost of living is so high, they could no longer afford to live there. They have to leave the city. That is also another problem that's going on in our country.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening, right? And where are those people going?
Right.
They're just going to overpopulated places, right? They're going to try to move out and try to get somewhere that's more affordable. And I was actually looking at right before we got on here. I was looking today at an article that was talking about how the gentrification of these big cities are forcing minorities to get pushed back into these small communities, and then next thing you know, that's why they're getting targeted with everything going on with coronavirus and all that, right? Because of this unfair justification and gentrification.
The things that we are discussing, some people will see it as non-traditional, and we're not trying to bring out traditional ways of solving these issues because the traditional ways definitely did not work. And so that is why we have to start thinking outside the box and start thinking about different ways of solving this issue. I even go further to even call these unpopular opinions, because I guess the popular one and traditional opinions aren't working, because if they were working, we would not be here talking about these lives that have been lost and will continue to lose. And therefore, in order for these non-traditional methods to work, all parties involved must play their part. Protests are going on, Chris. I'm feeling sorry for certain groups of people. One of them being the black mothers. The black mothers. Can you imagine having a kid like Tamir Rice who just wants to go to the park and just enjoy time with his friends, and receiving a call or somebody comes to your door and says that your kid is dead because somebody, an adult, a grown person, took the life of that kid? Can you imagine that as a black mother? Can you imagine the pain that you go through? And so when we are protesting, we also have to start thinking about these individuals. We have to think about the moms, man. The moms, man. I feel sorry. Like I'm thinking about my mom. Imagine if I'm in the park or outside or something were to happen to me and somebody shows up at the front door of my mom and telling her that Tijani is dead because somebody decided to take his life, man. That is some crazy stuff, Chris.
Right.
And the second group of people that I think about are those that we have serious relationships with, our significant others. Chris, you are black American born in New York. I'm African from Sierra Leone. And you are in interracial relationship, and I'm also in interracial relationship. And I'm married to a Mexican American. And I just have been thinking about the conversations that we've been having concerning our future, concerning having kids in the future, having these conversations with her and what that looks like, bringing a life into this world, the kind of threat they are going to encounter. Chris, my kids are going to be Muslim. They are going to be African. They are going to be Mexican. They are going to be living in the United States. And based on their gender or based on their sex, they're going to be treated differently. And it's not safe for them. And just thinking about that, Chris, me and you are still young, and we're thinking about this thing. This is not healthy for us. Right now, you're not married, but you have a serious relationship with someone, and you're having those conversations. These are some serious, traumatic conversations that we're having with our partners, Chris.
Yeah. And I also think about what you were just saying. I was thinking about for you, or for me. I know when Trayvon Martin got murdered, right? I was in high school, right, and I had to have that conversation with my mother as well, right? So it's like we also have to grow up really fast, right? It's when the kid become a kid, when the kid become an adult, right? In one hand, I think it allows us to have those conversations, right? Like, my girlfriend's white. I can have that conversation with her. We can talk about our experiences when, the looks we get, if we go out to go get dinner or something, or hey, this went wrong, in the news today, right? We can sit in that and we can have those conversations. But part of that is because, right, I was having these conversations about race when I was 12, 13, right? And I don't know that necessarily our white counterparts are having those conversations, right? When they're our age, when they are 12, 13, are they having the racial conversations? I don't know.
That's a good question. We wish. Probably if they did, we probably are not going to be here talking about this, Chris. It will be a different result.
Right.
And yeah, for people that, think that this is just a black issue, this is not a black issue. This is not just a black problem. This is a United States problem. So to fix it, it requires work from all of us. And no, just because you do not post or protest does not make you part of the problem. I don't think that it makes you part of the problem because you're not posting online. There are many, many other ways to get involved, like we have already highlighted. And one thing also, for people who hide behind the U.S. Constitution, let me tell you this. The founding fathers could not have anticipated that our elected officials would have no sympathy or simply be apathetic to the issues that are happening in our country. They could not have anticipated our elected officials not having common sense to respond to the urgent needs of the community. They could not have anticipated that in 2018, 2019, 2020, that people would buy AR-15 rifles and go into schools and shoot elementary school kids, go into religious houses like churches, synagogues, mosques, and other places to kill people that are in the house of worship They could not have anticipated that in 2017, a lunatic would drive his car into a group of protesters and kill Heather Heyer in Charlottesville. They could not have anticipated that in the same 2017, the president of the United States comes out, instead of categorically condemning the violence, instead he says there are also other good people on the other side. They could not have anticipated that. Chris, this is some crazy things that are happening in this country.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're right. And the other thing, too, is, we sit here and we talk about, our founding forefathers protected this and that. It's like, hey, we're hiding behind rules that were written 300 years ago, 400 years
right.
ago, So those rules they don't apply. It's almost illogical to me, honestly, that we haven't amended anything. We haven't talked about the times changes. You're exactly right. Yeah, when they're talking about, you're right to bear arms. They're not talking about the AR-15s that can be bought to go kill all these people. They're talking about a rifle. That's what they had.
And I'm pretty sure 400 years ago they had reasons, or maybe 200 years ago. Why would you need an AR-15 weapon?
You don't.
There's no justification for that.
Right.
So I don't understand it. Like, why are you hiding behind the Constitution or the right to bear arms? Bear arms, a pistol, not a freaking AR-15 weapon that you use at wars.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't make sense to me.
No, it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, personally, I can understand, if you want, a gun in your house, you want a shotgun, you want, something you can defend yourself with.
Right.
I personally don't think that you need to necessarily defend yourself with a military grade weapon unless you're going to war.
Right. Exactly.
So if you're not, I don't really think that you need to be walking down the street with your military grade weapon. Again, I think you can definitely bear arms. I think, if you want a pistol, you want a shotgun, you want something in your house, that's one thing, but
right.
I think me being able to go down the street and buy a semi-automatic assault rifle, and basically feel like I'm in the military and just go berserk is crazy.
Yes.
So I think that's the kind of mindset that the system lends itself to. I was reading something about that the other day. With I don't know, there was a guy in Florida, the bar owner, and he had some crazy guns, and he had a previous history of being a racist, and he killed somebody,
See?
And it's like people like this, you don't need to have access to this level of guns, right? The Constitution wasn't written necessarily for you to be able to go buy the next AR-15 and then just walk into a town and start shooting.
Right. And we talked about the parties that are involved in this. And so we spoke briefly about the victims, Black African-American men and women. Also, the mothers are victims of this, and Black men are significant others, also victims of this, and the children, the kids, are victims of this. But in order for us to solve this issue, it requires all of us, all the parties involved, including white parents, white people. I think I was thinking the other day, Chris. Tell me if I'm crazy, but I think the cars that we start making should also have dash cams. So when you get pulled over by a cop, it automatically turns on, so that you have some kind of protection, because you can't trust police officers to do their job, and the government is also a part of this. Black officers also need to do their job, because you can't have a partner who's racist and not call them out on it. They should not be standing out there looking at their partners committing this kind of crimes. And so Black officers also need to do better. The public, man, the public that are recording these killings, man, they should be doing better than just recording. They should be taking action, screaming, throwing rocks. I don't know. They need to do something other than just recording these things. The media also needs to play a role into this. They have to be intentional in their reporting, understanding that their reporting is also traumatizing the families that are going through this grief during this period. And black entrepreneurs, CEOs, black businesses should also be a part of the solution. Athletes, musicians, pretty much everybody in the United States should be a part of this solution. Chris, I'm thinking about this too. I mentioned about the car manufacturers to be a part of this solution. Athletes, Chris, the athletes, if they really come together, entertainers, if they really come together, these things could have a different results right now. Because right now what I'm seeing is the poor people, average Americans, are sacrificing more than the wealthy black athletes, the wealthy black entertainers, the wealthy celebrities. They are not really sacrificing enough, Chris.
Yeah. No, I agree. Everybody needs to step up. Everybody needs to step up. And I think, unfortunately, in our country, I think the ones that do make the change are the celebrities, right? Are those high profile people. And I think they need to step up. I think all of the companies need to issue statements, but I think the people behind the companies need to issue statements too. You know, if I'm the CEO of Amazon, great, Amazon issued a release, but I need to make a release as well, right? Because my name is my platform as well. So I think all of them need to step up. I think it's one thing to say, oh yeah, I'm an athlete. Oh, the NBA said something or the NFL said something. But no, I think you as that individual person needs to step up and you need to say, I don't agree with this as well. And I think it's somebody was talking the other day about, hey, it's tough for white people at the moment to, they can't say anything or slip up. And I was like, yeah, but that's been black people forever. So it's not really I disagree with what's happening. I can't slip up. I can't say an unpopular opinion. It's like, it's not an opinion. Like it's wrong. The systematic oppression of us is wrong. And if you don't agree with that, that's a whole nother conversation.
They're getting a 2-minute glimpse of being a black person in America and they can't even stand it.
Right. It's like, wow, try living that your entire life. And that's our exact point.
Wow. We are going to go into things that are already being done. Like black parents have taught. You mentioned that you've been having this conversation since you were 12 years old, or maybe earlier than that, when Trayvon Martin case came, and the parents have to really consider sitting one-on-one with their kids and start having these conversations. And so black parents have taught their children on how to interact with. This is not a parenting issue. What is happening lately is not a parenting issue. We're not even seeing these black brothers and sisters arguing with the police officers. We're not seeing disobeying commands. It's just brutal what is going on with them. So we can't really say that, okay, this is parenting issue. The parents need to talk to their kids. This is bigger than that. Right. We see videos of black men saying, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, and doing all the right things taught to them by their parents. And yet they are still murdered like dogs in a third world country, because a dog in the United States, if you murder a dog in the United States, you probably get prosecuted and go into jail. But they are killing our black brothers and sisters like dogs in a third world country, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, Michael Vick, how many years did Michael Vick get for the dog fights?
And he's still not forgiven. So many people are still hating on him.
Right. And that was a dog. And people don't think twice about when a black man's killed,
Yeah, and we've also done things like I Can't Breathe is a movement that's going on. The Black Lives Matters movement is another thing that's going on. Hands Up, Don't Shoot is another thing. And the kneeling that has been going on since 2016 with our brother Colin Kaepernick. He pretty much gave up his career for justice, but at the time people were not understanding it, Chris. And now they are seeing exactly what he's saying.
Yeah, and it's funny because, people are now, I've seen a lot of posts of football players and other people saying, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, I get where you're coming from. But then you have other people, the whole Drew Brees thing when he was like, oh, don't disrespect the flag. It's like people still aren't getting it.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, how far are you willing to ride on your own ignorance, Mm-hmm. At what point are you like, okay, like I need to do better?
Yeah. Chris, I know that before we got on this call, you shared with me some experiences that you've had with police officers. Do you mind telling us some of those experiences to the listeners?
Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, really. I wish you could say, oh, don't go to this one area, right? There's like bad cops there. But I've spent most of my life in New York. We met in Northern Virginia, and I've had experiences with, police at the borders when I'm going to Canada, when I'm in New York, when I'm driving my car. And every time it's like, hey, is this it? Am I going to get shot right here? I know one of the examples that really I'll never forget this is on our college campus. I think maybe 2016, 2015. One of my friends, she was inebriated after a party. She's white. And she said, hey, you know what? Like, I don't feel safe, walking back right now. Can you come get me? And I said, yeah, sure. I'll come get you. I was a student leader. I was a resident advisor. I said, yeah, no, I'll come get you. So I walk and I go get her, and I walk her to her house, or to her dorm. And right outside her dorm, the police had set up a checkpoint, and they stopped us. And they separated us, and I asked them. It was actually a cop that I knew from my time, being a resident advisor. You work with the police a lot, right? And I asked her, hey, what are we getting stopped for? And she basically was just like, yeah, I just wanted to see, how you know this girl, like who is this girl to you, like asking me all these questions and just kind of drilling into me. And I had just watched her, let all these other people walk by, but I get stopped outside, my friend's dorm, and I'm getting, asked, hey, who is this? Why do you know? Like, how do you know them? What's going on here? Separated us, segregated us, and I'm wondering, hey, what's going on? She's like, hey, sorry, we're doing routine stops now because it was the Hannah Graham situation that had went to UVA. And so she's like, yeah, so we're just checking in with everybody. And I'm like, why are you checking in with me when you know who I am? I'm an RA. You didn't check in with the 4 other people I just saw you walk by. So what's going on with these checkpoints? So that was just that I think that rubbed me the wrong way, and I never ended up. I mean, I ended up working with that cop, a bunch more in the future, but to this day, I can't. Every time I look at her, I just get angry. And she was a police sergeant, at one of the highest levels, right? So that was tough, right? And then as we had mentioned a little earlier in the podcast, I'm in an interracial relationship. My girlfriend's white. We're driving around, and we get stopped by the cops, and at the border. And they're like, yeah, how do you know it was me, my girlfriend, and 2 of my friends from back home at the time? And we're asleep. We were asleep. But we actually got woken up because they're like, hey, who is this guy? And, my girlfriend said, oh, this is my boyfriend. We're going to Canada. And they're like, how do you know them? What's your relation to this guy? What's your relation to that guy? Where does that guy live? Talking about, asking my girlfriend about my friends, asking her all these, really invasive questions. And we're just kind of like, hey, honestly, friend Tijani, you and I are friends. I don't know where you live, right? So it's like, why are you, harassing her? So right. About how does she know everybody in the car? Does she, it was just, they're just aggressing the situation, and to the point where we all woke up like, what's going on? So oftentimes I think we, each one of us have stories like that with the cops. And I think part of the problem too is I think we write it off as, hey, that's just, it is what it is. That's how my life is. That's what being Black America is. But it's like, right. We need to talk about these stories, right? Like we need this out there, and that needs to change because that shouldn't be how it is.
Yeah. And I've had my fair share as well. I remember my neighbors always calls the police when I'm outside cleaning my car and playing my music. I see the police come over. I'm like, so what's going on? They said, yeah, your neighbor called the police. I said, how come you could have just easily come downstairs or just knock on the window and tell me to put the music down? There's no reason for you to call the police. And then another time I was at a park. I was actually on the phone with Yasmin. She was in North Carolina at the time. And I was at the park. This is the park that I always go to play basketball. And so we normally play basketball there at the park until the lights go out. And so the police officers just pull up one day and they said, I was by myself. They said, I can't be there. I said, why not? Why not? They said, because we just got a call about somebody harassing people here. I said, well, that's not me. I'm sorry that you got the call, but it's not me. I'm just here. I'm just here to play ball by myself, and then I'll go home. The police officer said, I can't be there. I said, on what grounds? He said, it's after dark. I said, you see those lights? Those lights will go off when it's time. And so I've been playing ball here for the past 3-4 years. And so why is all of a sudden I can't play ball here anymore because you're telling me it's dark or park closes after dark? That's not the case, because the lights would go off. That's how we normally do it. I would have my friends, I would have people come over here and ball. And when the lights go out, we leave. And so I don't understand. And I was on the phone. This was 2-3 years ago. So it's after Trayvon Martin. And Yasmin just told me, hey, just go home. Don't engage into this. I don't want anything to happen to you. And Chris, I just had to leave the park. And this is a park that I always go to.
Yeah. I mean, it's ridiculous. And that's a public place, but it's also like, what happens when it's not in our, you just said, they're coming to your house. I got stopped. I was driving my car, and I got pulled over for tailgating somebody on an empty road. You know why I pulled you over? And I said, honestly, no. He said, you were tailgating someone too close, and, starts asking for my paperwork, asked me whose car it was, what's going on. And I'm like, I know I wasn't tailgating anyone. There's no one there. But I'm like,
it's empty.
Okay, officer, but I can't say anything. I can't, I don't want to say, oh, no, it's not. And then next thing you know, I'm hands up on my own car getting arrested for something that I didn't even do,
Right.
So it's in public. It's in our own places. It's everywhere. We can't escape it.
Right.
No, I actually saw something. There was a page about a police officer who he actually quit after all this. He was like, honestly, I think he basically he created a page to talk about all the different experiences that he's had, in his police career, eventually has led up to him quitting. But one of the parts that he had mentioned that kind of spoke out to me was, he said, working for my agency, you're taught from the beginning that you need to keep an eye out for black people in places they shouldn't be based off of a standard of wealth. If they don't look like they have the money to fit in with the regular people, in quotes, according to dress standards and slang, then they don't belong and they're suspicious. Go initiate contact, identify them, see if you can identify any possible drugs on them, tools that could be used for crimes or weapons. Go out of your way to do so. Make sure you continually question them as to why they're there, even if it's broad daylight, evening, or night, and they're legally allowed to be there. Instigate their emotions to get them hyped up so you can make them get aggressive if possible. If the place is on the trespass program with the police department, trespass them from there, or ask a worker at a location if they'll issue the trespass on behalf of the business, which they'll more than likely do because you're a cop and you must have a legal reason to do so.
Wow. Chris, I had a similar experience. I was driving in Arlington. The police officer pulls me over. I said, so what's up? He said, let me see your driver's license and registration. I gave him to that. And the next question, do you have any drugs or weed in your car? I'm like, what? Like, what makes you want to ask me that question? Do you smell weed in my car? What is your thinking process? But now it makes sense because that is how they train them in the academy.
Yeah.
Wow.
From day one.
Well, Chris, let's talk about some solutions here. Did you see what the mayor of DC did on the streets of 16th Street?
No, I didn't.
There was a painting that went up yesterday. She pretty much just had Black Lives Matters painted the entire street, and she changed the name of the plaza to Black Lives Matter Plaza. And so that is what the mayor of DC did yesterday on Friday. You should check it out after this recording.
That's amazing. You know what? I think I did see that. I didn't know that was specifically in DC.
Yeah, that happened yesterday in DC. The mayor of DC did that right in front of the White House, or that same street of the White House. And she had the whole street, like a big chunk of the street, painted out in bright yellow, Black Lives Matter. and she changed the plaza to Black Lives Matter Plaza. And so that is some crazy thing. I mean, other people have their take on that because there are other things that we could be doing that are more productive, but that is a start. I like that idea. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a start. I think that idea is dope. I mean, yes, there are more things that we need to do, but I think one of the first things we need to do is have everything be out there, right? It has to be out in public. Like, hey, this isn't going away, right? This isn't about politics, right? This is about human rights, right? So the start of anything having to deal with human rights has to be transparency, right? It needs to be out in the public. We need to see it, right? We need to speak about it, right? So doing something as big and bold as that, where it's out in the public, everyone can see it, that sparks a conversation. And if you type it in big and bold, big enough with yellow font, you can't miss it. You have no choice but to talk about it, right? So I think that's amazing. I think that needs to be there forever. That never needs to go away, right? And I was talking to somebody yesterday. Was talking about, oh yeah, they're putting Black Lives Matter on Twitter and Hinge, or not Twitter, Tinder and Hinge, and those e-dating platforms, and they're putting them on video games and all that. And I said, good. I hope it never goes away.
Right. And another solution that I've been thinking about for a long time. I think we should have a Black Lives Matter memorial. The DC memorials we should have, so when tourists come from different countries, they can see these names of Black people that are being killed in the streets for no reason. They should be able to go into DC and see the names of each and everybody that has been killed under police brutality. Maybe then the international community can put pressure on the United States to actually have these intentional solutions in the communities.
Yes. No, I like that idea. I was having this conversation a couple of days ago when, I don't know if you saw in the news, they were talking about how they plan to get rid of the Confederate statues in Virginia. I think they're in like Richmond or something like that. And somebody had asked me in my opinion of that. And I said, you know what? Like, initially, I'm like, that's great. I don't think those statues should have been there to begin with. And I think that's how most people would feel. But then I thought about it a little more, and I said, you know what, though? Them getting rid of those statues, or them hiding the fact that those Confederate leaders were, part of their history, right? And have been oppressing us. So it's almost like they're hiding their history by them getting rid of it, right? So I think that needs to not go away, right? I think every single bad thing that you've done for us, that shouldn't go away, right? That needs to be talked about. That needs to be in public. So I think that idea of a Black Lives Matter memorial is amazing, right? Like, people need to see what you've been doing, and hey, this needs to change. And hey, has this changed? Oh, it hasn't. Why hasn't it? Right? I think a memorial, something like that, would be amazing. I don't know how we could build that, but I definitely think there needs to be something. And I hope that, the hope is we don't have to continue to add to it, right?
Right.
But I definitely think something like that would allow it to never be forgotten.
Chris, I have a question for you. Like I said, you are from New York, right?
Yeah.
Why is it that when I meet like brothers like you or sisters that are born in the United States, I try to talk to them about the idea of them traveling back to Africa, and they said that, oh yeah, we don't have anything going for us in Africa. Chris, why is it that when we try to talk you to going to Africa, not you specifically, but like brothers that are born here, they claim that they are blacks. When we try to talk to them to go to Africa, why do they get bugged about it?
That's a really good question. I think we're taught differently. Like, I think we're taught, I think it's the media, right? Like, the media portrays Africa to be this or that, right? And I think growing up Black in America, you're like, oh, those were my ancestors, or oh, that's not me. You see, people say, oh yeah, they're starving kids in Africa, and so it's like, oh, I'm not a starving kid in Africa. Like, so the media kind of forces you to feel like, oh, I'm not that. That's not my story, right? I think that's part of it. But I also think, I was thinking about this yesterday, when, the Jewish community, for instance, they all have like birthright citizenship, right? Like, once you get to a certain age, They'll fly you. You can go back to Israel. I don't know for how long, right? But you go and you connect with your culture. But
Right.
we don't have that in our community, right? Like there's no program that, hey, when I turn 18, every black person when they turn 18 is flown to Africa and spends a week learning about, their culture and their history, right? That's not a thing in our community. I think that would be amazing, and I think that would change people's mindsets of black versus, African American versus African, or, I think those are some of the things that we need to do to start.
Right, and yeah, I'm aware of that Jewish philosophy of the birthright, and which is great. And this is why I said, in order for us to actually make actual intentional change, we need the black millionaires. We need the black billionaires to actually do something. They don't have to be American millionaires. They can be Africans. We have a lot of millionaires, billionaires in Africa that could easily do things like this on a yearly basis, and it shouldn't cost them that much. They would still be rich. They would still be millionaires. They would still be billionaires if they still sponsor. Matter of fact, if all of them can come together and have some kind of a foundation that does these things, Chris, we could easily do this, not just for the United States, but for England, for any other countries in the West.
Yeah, 100%.
Black people are traveling to other continents, like countries like Canada. They go to the Asian, European, Australian, and we have black people that go to Antarctica. They travel to Antarctica, Chris, in a cold place, but they cannot travel to Africa. They travel to these other continents that don't even care about them. They only care about the money, but they can't go to Africa, where they're from.
Right.
So here's my recommendation about that, because I know some black Americans say that there's nothing for them in Africa, which I totally disagree with. Africa is your roots. If you try, you will find something. And so the problem is that African countries, especially those with dark-skinned Africans, should have open borders for Africans living in the United States and other areas. The wealthy people in those countries should have resources available for these brothers and sisters to start a new life in Africa. Africa is your home, and you should know that. And so the things that we're talking about, the African continent plus the people in the United States and around the world can come up with a solution where they can have people like you travel to Africa for free on a yearly basis, Chris. And when you have your kids, you could also take them to Africa.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be great. And I think those are something like that would be the positive change to have with, the positive change in conversation to have with my kid. Instead of me having to have a talk with my 8-year-old son about how, he needs to be okay and can't wear a hoodie at night, right, to go to the store. It can be, hey, this is where our family's from. This is the village that, we grew up in, right? Those are the conversations that we should be having with our 8-year-olds, as opposed to, hey, you need to make sure you have your ID with you every single time you walk outside, so they can't tell you that you're somebody else that bring you in for questioning just because you don't have an ID, right? I think those would be the amazing conversation.
Right. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because what do you do when a place you call home is no longer a home, like in the United States today? What do you do when a home is no longer a home? That is because when we think about immigrants, the reason why they come to the United States to find a new life is because the place that the original countries that they're from, that they used to call a home, is no longer a home for them, because they feel persecuted. They feel that their lives are in danger. And that's when they are forced to leave their countries to come to the United States. So if they are able to do that, if they are able to come to the United States to start a better life for their kids and a better life for themselves, then a black African or a black American should be able to go to Africa and also reconnect with their people. There shouldn't be any problem. This is why, because you are adaptable. People are adaptable. I'm pretty sure if you take that step to go to Africa, the Africans will welcome you with open arms. So you cannot keep fighting to make a place that is not a home become a home. And that is when we have situations where you die trying because you're forcing things to happen. It's sad, I know, because you are born here. You should be able to feel safe in this country. But the reality is, it's not safe. your life is a threat on the street. And so
Right.
when that is the case, what do you do? So let's talk about like where do we go from here? For this to work, we already talked about this. We need the Black African American communities to come together. We need the mothers to come together. We need the Black significant others like our boyfriend, girlfriends, everybody to come together. We need the kids to come together. We need white parents. We need white people to come together. We need everybody, Black officers. We need everybody in the community to come together. We need the public to stop recording this heinous. You can record it after you take action, but you have to have not just the recording aspect. You have to do something bigger than just recording. We need the media to be intentional in their reporting. We need the athletes to join together. We need the entertainers. We need artists to come together. Chris, can you imagine if the athletes decided that they are not going to play any other games until the industry does something? Can you imagine if celebrities, if movie makers, they said, I am not acting any other movie until the industry does something? Can you imagine if artists saying that no music streaming, no paintings, no radio stations, no television stations, no movie theaters, no games until something happens in their communities? Can you imagine what would happen?
Change would happen immediately.
I'm telling you, Chris, it's not enough what we're doing. And a lot of people hide behind, oh yeah, we got to vote. Black people are already voting. The Democratic Party is a Democratic Party because Black people save it time and again. They are always voting, but voting is not enough. Matter of fact, this past 2 years, we have the most diverse Senate and House of Representatives in the history of the United States. And we have Ilhan Omar, who is a Somalian American or an Arab who's representing Minnesota. And we also have the Attorney General who's Black in Minnesota. But we still have these things happening in these cities and states. Voting is not just the answer. There has to be more to this. And in order for us to be able to be successful, man, the Black people need to do better. Like the rich Black people need to do better. Forming coalitions, working with local organizations. More responsible Black officers need to speak up. The community need to come together. Resources need to be available for these communities. Chris, another thing that I also hear a lot when we talk about these things, especially when the brother Colin Kaepernick was protesting in 2016, we hear a lot that the NFL came out, the NBA came out and said that they are investing in the communities. Chris, you are from New York. Do you see any of these investments in the community?
Yeah, I don't know about all that. I think sure, there some are, right? I think LeBron James, for instance, is a great example. He built a school, right? But I think the NFL, the NBA, they're out here. I don't know what community they're investing in, right? I don't necessarily think it's the Black community. I don't see, hey, these schools being built. I don't see these programs being put in place, and maybe that's just not in my neighborhood where I grow up, but it seems very much that they're helping other communities that aren't ours.
That's right, but it is our community that needs the help, and they always come out, oh yeah, we're investing millions of dollars. But Chris, I live in Virginia, you're from New York. I don't see this in my community either. So somebody is lying to us, or they are investing this money in the wrong programs. And in addition to what we're saying, if we really want to see a blackout, the people that we just mentioned, these entertainers, these celebrities, these athletes, these artists, if we really want to see a blackout in the United States, not just a post, if we want to see a blackout in the United States, we need these athletes not to show up to games. We need these artists not to show up to games. We need the Black CEOs, the Black presidents, the Black business owners to shut it down for 24 hours. Chris, if we really want to affect change in the United States, we have to affect, the Black community has to affect the economy.
Mm-hmm.
If you attack the economy for 2 days, Chris, 24 hours, believe me, there would be an instant change in the United States. Matter of fact, when they said that you need this many people to do an amendment in the Constitution, if you really want to see how fast the Constitution can be amended, you affect the economy, because all they care about is the economy. So when Black people target that economy, because Black people are contributing majorly into the economy, so when they target that economy, Chris, we'll see actual intentional change happening in this country in less than 24 hours.
I agree with you 100%. 100%.
So it's crazy, Chris. I'll give you some time to share some of the resources that you brought up in the show. You have some links that you want to share with us that people can continue to stay informed about the issues that are happening in the community. Can you go ahead and share with us some of the resources that you have in your disposal?
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially right now, I think social media, right, is huge. It plays such a big part of our lives. I think with everything that's going on right now, you know, we talk about all these people, all these names you mentioned, right, because they got filmed, right? They got put on social media platforms, you know, all the pressure that we're putting on society around us is through social media. And I think it's important to affect your timeline and have your timeline giving you the right information, right? So, you know, I think if you're on Instagram or on Twitter, I personally, I think everybody right now needs Twitter. I think it's just a powerful platform to get news. And I think if you're on those platforms, I think you need to be following, you know, Black Lives Matter, Color of Change, the NAACP. They're, you know, those are big names people know of, you know, but also you need to be following Showing Up for Racial Justice, the Civil Rights Board, Reclaim the Block, right? Those are all, if you're not following those platforms, you need to be following them, you know. And I think those alone post every single day about, hey, how you can make change, right? What you can do, what's going on, what protest is here, what petition to sign. I think everybody needs to get on that. You know, I had saw something somebody was posting the other day that was just like, hey, like all these people did this blackout, but only, you know, less than half of y'all had signed a petition for George Floyd, you know? So it's more than the lip service, it's the action and the follow through. But then I think we need to be educated, right? I think you need to read up, you need to listen to podcasts, right? You need to have those conversations, and you need to be ready for the conversations to have, right? You know, I think on NPR, they're the Code Switch podcast. I think the New York Times has 1619. There's another podcast, The Diversity Gap. So I think you need to really watch those. You need to, or listen to those rather, right? I know people had posted about on Netflix, you know, there's 13th and Dear White People and When They See Us. You know, there's shows that you can watch, movies you can watch, right? If Beale Street Could Talk, The Hate That You Give. I think everybody needs to do a better job of reading. If you're not reading at least an hour a day, I think you need to be. And there's a ton of books on race, right? Just Mercy. There's White Fragility. So I think it starts with there, right? The new Jim Crow. I think it starts there, and I think you start and you need to continue, right? It's not just a, hey, let's do this here now, and then, you know, a month from so, okay, cool, I watched all my Netflix shows, okay, cool, I read a couple of books, like I'm good, right? I think you need to educate yourself and continue to educate yourself, and then once you are educated enough and armed with your knowledge, you need to make that knowledge actionable, right? And I think you need to act on it. I think, you know, everybody needs to be in coalitions. I think we need to have monthly protests until things change, right? When you know, the society opens back up, I think we still need to have protests, right? Every month, you know, in every city. I think, you know, we need to have groups like, hey, there's an employee resource group, a multicultural ERG at your job. Well, see if you can get it to expand outside your job. It's great that you have, you know, a monthly or weekly meeting, but hey, let's actually have this ERG, you know, go to a senator's office and petition right outside, right? Make a scene until things change there, right? I think all of us need to do more.
Chris, can you tell us what ERG is?
An employee resource group. So, you know, most companies, if you're at a company and you're not already in an employee resource group, try to start one if they're not there, right? Or if they are, ask around, right? Join them. Most companies should have at least one or two, whether it's for, you know, specifically Black people or you know, women, or a ton of ERGs out there. So I think, you know, if you don't know if you have one, I think that's a question that needs to be asked, right? Hey, you know, do we have this? If not, how can I start this? What do I need to start this? You know, join and really.
And in addition to what the resources you just shared, thank you for that, Chris. There are other things that we could also do, like acting into actions. And white people need to visit Africa as well. I'm not saying South Africa. South Africa is in Africa. That is true. But I'm saying visit other countries other than South Africa. There are at least 55, 54 other countries in Africa that you could visit. In fact, recommending going to the parts of Africa where Black Africans live is another thing white people can do. Send your kids to study abroad. I know that we already have a lot of white females who do go abroad to do Peace Corps. They go abroad to teach. They go abroad to do volunteer work. They should be going to places where Black Africans live, and not just the white females. The white males should be doing that as well, because we are focusing our conversation more on the actions of white males. And Chris, this is also another way for us to effect change in the community. The different ways to participate in making a change in the community, because when you learn about the culture of another person, when you know about their culture, that you know about their history, you're more likely to understand and behave well around them. You're more likely to interact in a positive way around them. You're more likely to understand their kids, understand the things that they have going on in their lives. And this is also another way to effect change, where we have white Americans actually visiting parts of Africa that Black Africans live, and also donating to good causes. Chris mentioned a list of things that you can donate to. You know, it's so many things that people can do. You could become like, I know that some of my friends post on social media that just because you didn't post something on social media means that you are part of the problem. I don't believe in that, because you can also contribute in different ways. People can contribute differently. If you read a book or you read a post about Black Lives Matter, if you act on a something and you contributed to a good cause, you have contributed to the cause. If you educate yourselves about the issues, you have contributed. If you donate, you have contributed. And no, just because you did not text me to ask me how I was coping with this doesn't mean that you are part of the problem. We understand that we are in dangerous times right now. We understand we're in the middle of a pandemic, and that is understanding. You have to take the time to cope. You have to take the time to heal, and we have to be forgiven during these times. And so just because you didn't text me to ask me how I was doing doesn't mean that I'm going to classify you as being part of the problem. But we have to see that you are making efforts to educate yourself, that you are having conversations with your kids. It's not just because our Black mothers and our Black fathers are already having the conversations with us. We are the victims in this. Chris, we shouldn't be recording this. We should have other races recording this to educate people. But no, the victims, are also the ones taking on the efforts to educate the people. So it's just really crazy. So reading a book about the issues, buying music from Black artists, Black merchants, buying their products, spending money on their restaurants, any possible ways that you see fit for you, that works for you, is a good way to contribute to the culture. You have, and just acknowledging that we have these issues and having those conversations is also part of contributing to the cause. And we are also having conversations with our colleagues at work, our kids, our neighbors, is part of the conversation to move it forward. We cannot forget the names of the people that we lost during this fight, and we cannot forget their families. We cannot forget their mothers. The reason why we are on the streets striking, we are on the streets for a good cause, so we cannot lose sight of that. There is no equivalent justice for any of this individual, and we keep putting hashtag justice for Brianna, justice for Trayvon, justice for George, justice for Tamir Rice. There isn't going to be any equivalent justice for any of the brothers and sisters we've lost. The actual justice would have happened had we arrested them and give them the opportunity to defend themselves in court. Any of them, for example, Breonna Taylor, arrest her, give her a court date to appear in court. And so give her that opportunity to go to court and say, what you accused me of is not right. Matter of fact, there wasn't any crime accused of her. And so for you to go out there and just take her life is not justice. For us to go out there and protest for her is not justice. The real justice is saving her life. her being here today to be on the streets with us protesting, her being here today to be able to appear in court and defend herself, that is justice. And so the only justice that we're seeking, Chris, is for this not to happen to the next African American kid, for this not to happen to the next black kid on the streets. That is the justice. Other than that, the protests that we're doing, we're not doing them directly because of the people that we've lost. Those people, we've lost them. It's really sad. It's really unfortunate, but we are fighting for the next life. It's just really sad. Chris, if you have any last minute things that you want to say, you want the listeners to be aware of, and you can say that now so we can wrap up this episode. And I really appreciate you coming in. If you have any last minute things, any last minute resources, we are all ears.
Yeah, no, I think first, just thank you for letting me be on your podcast and have this conversation with you. I think it's amazing. Your podcast, The Truth Hurts. It does, it does, but that is part of life, right? Like, we need to be having these conversations, and the more we have these conversations with more regularity, the more things will change, right? I think it turns from being politics to people, and I think that's where we need to get to. I don't think talking about race should ever have been politics in the beginning. I think there was a few donation places, I think, that you can check out for Breonna Taylor, for George Floyd on their GoFundMe pages. There are pages for them. I think we had alluded to that, but hadn't mentioned it. I know there's definitely bailout funds for, I think, every city that's having protests. If you're like, hey, what can I do? Definitely, try to donate if you can't physically be there in person, right? If you don't have a social media platform, I think there's definitely bailout donation places you can, submit your money to and try to help out there. But, overall, I think we need to have more conversations like this with more regularity. When we start doing that, and when the athletes and the celebrities and the people with voices that might be a little louder than ours are speaking up, and we're all saying the same thing, I think things will really begin to change.
Yeah, Chris, that's absolutely true. And we hope that the athletes, we hope that the musicians, we hope that the celebrities can come together and sacrifice some more. We cannot have a society that only one person sacrifices, like Colin Kaepernick. We should be able to have more than that. We should be able to have more athletes, able to have more entertainers sacrifice. It's just, if we all come together, Chris, it's so much that black people are contributing to this culture. If we all come together, we would effect change right away. The U.S. sports industry is responsible for $75 billion in 2019, a report that I was reading. And the U.S. entertainment industry is responsible for $678 billion in 2018. Guess what? In 2014, the NFL consists of 68% black athletes. The NBA in 2015 was 74.4% of black athletes. And so if these athletes decided that no change, no game, no change, no show, trust me, these changes would happen right away. And so, Chris, I thank you so much, man, for coming in and share this information with us. What we're going to do is we're going to have some of these links on the description of the podcast and on our page so people can access this information. And we hope that people learned from this and that they are able to gain this information and share it with people that they care about so that we can all affect change. And Chris, if people want to find out about more information or they have a question for you, is it okay for me to provide your IG so that people can reach you through that?
Sure. Yeah, my Instagram, Chris the Philosopher. My Twitter is Quick Reid. Yeah, definitely. Let's keep the conversation going.
Thank you so much for coming in, Chris, and take care of yourself out there, man.
You too.
There you have it, everybody. If you're listening to this still, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening through and through. Make sure, if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button so you can get this automatically downloaded the next time new episodes come out. We have a lot more experiences and stories to tell, and I cannot wait to share them with you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Reviews are always appreciated. Thank you. I appreciate you, and let me know what you think on our Instagram at La Verdad Duele Pod. Our team is here to serve you. We look forward to hearing about your successes, and maybe one day we may invite you to the studio to share. We wish you luck. The La Verdad Duele family has your back. Thank you so much.